Give us a picture, if you would, of what the Amnesty International IT infrastructure looks like globally.
That's a great question. So Amnesty, for those that don't know, is a global movement of more than 10 million people in 150 countries and territories that campaign to end abuses of human rights. So loosely, that work falls into investigative journalism, research, advocacy, and kind of policy, I guess, and all the other stuff that comes with being a non-profit in terms of awareness and education. So there's a lot in there. That means that we're kind of an information-led organization. If you remember back in your university days or your school days when you used to do a research project, you kind of, look at the hypothesis maybe, you look at how you want to investigate something, gather the evidence to try and come up with some insights and facts, and then you produce an output. We kind of do that on a huge scale. Because it's important. I mean, we have to hold governments and big tech and dictators and so on to account and support criminal investigations where necessary too at the International Criminal Court. So we do some really heavy stuff. That puts some of our people in the line of fire, virtually and physically. And it presents a fantastic challenge and opportunity, really, because we're such a diverse organization globally. Different languages, different beliefs, different values, different ways of working. So that presents opportunity in things like common ways of working, equitable access to information and technology and support services, multilingualism, all these fantastic things. So what I see in my organization is a lot of what you may see from the outside, which is the digital divide between global north and global south, perhaps, sure. The haves and the have-nots, people coming from different backgrounds. But the technology, I mean, as I say, being information-led, we work a lot around collaboration. Translation technology is also important to us. The basics, actually, getting people access to good internet, reliable power, good laptops that work, good communications that work, being able to support people when they're off on their own, off grid, so to speak, doing investigations and gathering evidence, and then helping them to do something with that evidence when they get back to make sense of it and analyze it. And on top of all the normal business support services you might expect for a multi-million-pound organization in terms of enterprise resource planning systems, cybersecurity.
I was going to say cybersecurity stands out. I mean, what give us an overview of the cybersecurity considerations for 10 million person strong, highly sensitive organizations such as Amnesty?
Again, operating globally presents with some unique challenges and opportunities, particularly because, we do upset some people given what we do and in the name of what we do. So we are target to nation-state actors in terms of cybersecurity threat, and these have unlimited resources, right? And they target a non-profit to specifically discredit you, disrupt your operations, find out who the whistleblowers were. These are all sorts of things that bad actors would try and do. And so we have a lot to do in that space particularly. And I've got a great team that, frankly, that do a wonderful job in helping us to defend the organization from some of that. But it's also a little bit more linked to the physical real world. So in a lot of organizations I've worked in, it's always been a kind of a conversation around the bad guys are out to get you a little bit. Talking about some theoretical risk that may or may not ever transpire. At Amnesty, it's very real. So some of our supporters, they can't say what they need to say sometimes. They can't whistleblow, they can't report stuff. They have to be careful what they say online for fear of having a knock on the door and getting physically arrested and interrogated. So it's not just about protecting the organisation, it's about protecting the privacy and security of our supporters as well, to allow them to help us advocate for human rights. So the challenge is broad, and it's a wonderful one to have in terms of a technology leadership individual, because you get to respond to all of this stuff, but it's relentless in that sense too. You'll find us on some bounty hit lists as well, quick Google.
Yeah, I'm sure, sadly. You mentioned, investment, and obviously it's a huge organization, it's a non-profit. Nonetheless, there must be a lot of new technologies which for you look like they could have real utility for your members. And how do you strike that balance, and what areas do you see huge potential in where you can actually really give something to the people who you work with?
Great question. I think, how do you strike the balance? I think carefully. I think, because our money is not our own. We rely completely on donor funding. So you have to be a little bit more cautious in terms of what you experiment with and to, step carefully into innovation. I think so. That's the first thing. I think secondly, you still have to provide basic fundamental services before you can start thinking about anything good. There are certain commodity things that people just expect to be good and to work well. But as I say, as an information-led organization, there's a lot of emerging tech that holds potential opportunity for us and risk, I have to say. So firstly, as an example, we need to make sure that what we advocate for externally is lined up to our internal position on emerging tech. Does it take advantage of people? Does it represent bias? Does it marginalize communities? What's it like for the environment? These are all things that I have to square the circle on in terms of internal tech use too. So there are technologies like large language models and collaborative technologies and things like that do hold some opportunity for us in terms of how we do what we do and how we manage the information through its life cycle. But also being resource constrained and operating in an environment where financially, the cost of living is going up, donor propensity to give is dropping, itself presents unique challenges. And so, as they say, necessity is the mother of innovation, I think is the saying, isn't it? So I've got a
invention, maybe
potentially, something like that,
like
that. So I've got a great team that have a fantastic learning mindset, as well as doing the day job. They're developing their own skills and they're looking for opportunity for the organisation. So I'm lucky in that sense.
On that point, talk about the team. Obviously, talent acquisition. It's so competitive out there for everybody we speak to, and at the end of the day, you can't necessarily compete financially with the blue chip organizations.
Absolutely.
You must be looking for people driven by that sense of mission,
Yeah.
because you're not going to want to compromise. I mean, what's that look like for you in terms of team building and cultivation of talent and support?
Yeah, it's again a good question. I think so. One thing I've learned in the non-profit space, I think, is that every man and woman, to an individual you kind of cut them in half and they've got the cause wrote in like a stick of rock, and you see that in every recruit. Really passionate, really dedicated. And that's kind of a prerequisite, I think, in the non-profit space. If you come to non-profit space thinking you're going to get rich or famous, that's not where you would do it. But if you come in to make a difference and spend your time in a worthwhile way, then that's what you do. But as you say, we certainly can't necessarily compete. I think any non-profit can compete with some of the salaries with the big blue chips, the big the kind of multinationals. And so we appeal to the altruistic aspects of an individual to say, how do you want to spend your life? Do you want to come and help us make a difference?
Start introducing that in the interview process.
It absolutely is. It is. And we hire for aptitude and we hire for skills, to start with. And you do start to look at the whole individual a little bit more. What potential does the individual have? What do they bring to the table? What's their, what do they think? What do they believe in? You start to think a lot more than have they got the 10 years experience and a few certificates and in you come. Not saying that's what everyone does, but it's been great because I've been lucky as a result to have a whole load of people that are completely driven for the cause, happy to go the extra mile. They can see the difference that their work makes directly, absolutely directly. And that's very rewarding as well. So I try to share that where I can. Not just because I think it's great in terms of recognition for the team's work, but also because I think it's important to talk more broadly about the work of Amnesty to, again, help with that awareness and education. And hopefully instill the benefits of working in a non-profit a little bit more in industry.